This film footage is from the recently completed Malahat Road in 1912. It is, as far as we know, the earliest Canadian film footage of a motor car in operation. It records the adventurous journey of the Duchess of Connaught touring the Malahat Road not long after its completion. The Malahat Road connects the capital city of Victoria to the Cowichan Valley via Malahat and Mill Bay. It does not follow the rail route past Sook Lake and Shawnigan Lake. The Malahat Road was a marvel in its day, featuring incredible views and landscapes, but the road was a challenge to build and maintain. It consisted of loose gravel, few guardrails, and wooden bridges. And the cars that traveled this road in the early 1900s were nothing like today's vehicles. Cars of this period had wooden spoke wheels, narrow high-pressure tires, rudimentary brakes, complex controls, soft, springy suspension, and none of the safety features we've become accustomed to in modern cars, and their engines were not particularly powerful when compared to today's cars. The wood spoke wheels were not very strong and were vulnerable to loosening over time. The tires were made from natural rubber and were prone to punctures. Roadside repairs were an everyday part of motoring back then, often involving tire tube patch kits or repair outfits. That's what they called replacement tire tubes. The brakes were commonly only on the rear wheels and were mechanically operated, requiring a great deal of pedal force and frequent maintenance. The suspension systems were soft and had very rudimentary damping, if any at all. While this provided a softer ride over rough roads, it resulted in poor handling. Engines in luxury cars of this era typically only had 20 to 60 horsepower. While certainly underwhelming by modern standards, it was very much the standard of the time. Less exotic cars were even less capable, commonly equipped with only 10 to 14 horsepower. We've tried to identify the cars in this film, but the blurry images make identification of the make and model very difficult. The fact that the cars were too often filmed from the rear doesn't help either. Here are the clearest images of the cars in the film. From these, we were able to discern that these were luxury touring cars. That's not a surprise. One would expect the Duchess of Connaught to travel in nothing less. These high-end touring cars were open models, providing unobstructed views to the impressive scenery. The luxury vehicles typically came equipped with fabric top that could be raised, lowered, or removed altogether, and usually featured at least 2 rows of seats. Here is an incomplete list of American luxury car manufacturers in the early 1900s. As you can see, there were many, and often the differences between them were subtle. Most luxury tourers in the 1910 to 1912 era had many features in common. Most were of a similar length and width and typically weighed over 1,200 kilograms. That's about 2,500 pounds. Despite radiator shape being often cited as a characteristic feature of a car, most were very similar in overall shape. Driving these cars on the newly completed yet very primitive Malahat Road must have been a tremendous challenge. I suspect the strange controls on my Ford Model T were simple compared with the complex controls on one of these machines. Imagine piloting a heavy, underpowered car with narrow tires and sketchy brakes over this very rough route. The tall chassis with a high center of gravity and lack of modern anti-sway bars would make the car lean out of the corners and rock wildly over uneven road surfaces. The soft leaf spring suspension with little or no damping would make the vehicle bump and bounce dramatically, and with no power steering, all of these disturbances would be transmitted to the driver's arms. And don't get caught driving after dark. The headlights are powered by acetylene gas, and the flame didn't produce anywhere near the light intensity that modern halogen or LED headlights do. Some estimates rate the light output of acetylene gas headlights at 1/4 that of a modern headlight. And remember, these open cars had no side windows, so there was no protection from inclement weather. Some drivers might have taken the time to fit fabric side curtains, but most motorcar enthusiasts just wore warm, waterproof clothing. In winter, they used tire chains or tied ropes onto the rear wheels to improve traction. You may have noticed this car in the thumbnail. It's driving along the Malahat in 1912, but we don't know if it was a member of the party that made the film. These fellows are posing with what might be a 1912 EMF on one of the wooden bridges along the Malahat Road. Here's a photo from 1912 in front of a dealership in Victoria, BC. One or more of these cars might be in the Malahat film, but there's no way to be sure. The car on the left is an American underslung, which has a unique axle overframe architecture. This well-to-do Victoria family is posing with what looks to me to be a 1912 Pillman. This is the doctor's parking area at the St. Joseph Hospital in Victoria in 1915. I hope you enjoyed this look back at the cars of the early 1900s in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada that might have been featured in the Malahat 1912 film footage. As always, thanks for watching. This is Stephen from Flivver Channel, signing off. you.